All righty. All right. Well, family and friends, welcome to another edition of the Reimagine You Lab podcast. I am your host that you know the most, and I am here today with an amazing guest. Now, before we jump into the conversation, because I know that you guys have been waiting every week, you tune in. If you have not subscribed yet, don't forget to do so. Hit the bell so we can make sure that every time a new episode drops, it drops right into your box. And make sure that if you've got comments or want to share anything, please do. We love to hear from you. I am so excited though, because this afternoon I've got Melvin Lars in the lab. So Melvin, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, Melvin, this is that time in the show. I told you already that I am going to say, all right, Melvin, we're going beyond the bio. I'm about to toss the ball over the fence. So here it comes to you. Tell them who you are, where you're at, what you do, and how you do it.
I shall. And thank you for having me again. My name is Melvin Casey Lars. I'm a retired high school principal, a former NFL free agent football player with the Houston Oilers and with the Oakland Raiders. I'm an activist. I'm an artist, a poet. I've authored over 7 books. Most of those books are, quote, had very serious books, I might say. The poetry, maybe a little bit there. I hail from Louisiana originally, but as an adult, I've lived in Los Angeles, Atlanta, Michigan, Ohio, Texas. I've been all over the place, just honing my craft as an educator. I'm also very proud to say that as a high school principal, I was very successful, having great people to learn under. If you're familiar with Dr. George McKenna, he's on Netflix right now with his movie called Hard Lessons. Denzel Washington plays a part of one of my great mentors of whom I worked for in Los Angeles. So to make a long story short, I am Bernice's son. I always love to tell people that. I will go back real quickly. I'm an activist. People now are talking about being woke. I am very proud and very happy to say I've been woke all of my life. I'm a former NAACP president in Saginaw County, Michigan. I'm also a former, Urban League director as well. So we don't only waste our time talking about things that other people do, we get involved.
All right. No, I love it. We got some things in common. I love this. Melvin Case. So so that I make sure that I call your name appropriately, should I say Melvin or Melvin Casey when I state your name?
Melvin Casey is fine. Lars is fine. Whatever you're comfortable doing, let's roll with it. And dare I say, I know my Divine Nine people see the K on the shirt, and I'm a proud member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated.
Oh, wow. Oh, my goodness. You know what? I am going to have to tell another retired NFL player, one of our clients, who is also a Kappa and who is also a principal currently of a high school. So I'm Fantastic. You probably know Kevin Dyson. Are you familiar with Kevin Dyson?
The name sounds familiar, but I will not lie. The gentleman I do not know, but that name sounds familiar.
Yeah, Kevin, he is most notably known and recognized for the Music City Miracle, as well as the 1 Yard Short play, 2 plays that are both chronicled in top 100. I think they said top 100, top 50 plays, memorable plays.
Absolutely, that's why I know the name. And dare I say, as God is my witness, without being condescending, he probably heard me cheering from Houston. I was living in Texas at that time.
And is that right?
Yes. Yes. So I would be more. I would love to meet that brother.
He'd be a good brother for you to meet. I think you guys will probably hit it off very, very well. Very
Fantastic.
Well. I love that. Now, you have done a number of things in your life, and
yes,
as we were talking about before we came on to before we started recording, the show is all about change and how people either are pushed into it, they're forced, or they lean into it because they're ready for a change themselves. So, Melvin, tell me, for you, which one was it? Was you forced? Was you, or did you lean in?
Actually, it may have been a little bit of both, if I'm
Okay.
totally transparent,
Yeah.
because I learned from an early age, and I use that now, that I first had to know who I was before I could really be significant in moving anything. And
Mhm.
when we talk about change, we know many times change is relative, and we know many times, as you said, pushed or fell into it. We may change because of certain things that we learn about ourselves. We may change because others that love us may pull us to the side, sometimes more than once, and say, "Hey, you might want to work on that." So
Yeah.
that's why I say it without being sarcastic. Probably, I'm sure, not probably, a little bit of both. Seeing things within myself and having a push at some point.
Okay. So with that, then I've got to ask, what would you say was the biggest change that changed you? Because
Working on,
there's a series of changes, and we all evolve, right? Like I'm getting
yes,
gray hair now. Um,
yes.
so as long as we live in, there's going to be some change that makes. But what would you say was the biggest change that changed you?
The biggest change that changed me was working on my anger. And I say that I grew up, unfortunately, in a home fraught with domestic violence.
Okay.
And I was angry all the time. And because I was angry because of the situation. And my mother would always say to me, well, you need to work on your temper and calm yourself down and this, that, and the third. Well, being a young, hard headed kid, thinking, being macho, I didn't really take that to heart until I really started to really pay attention to how many times people would wound up in prison. God forbid they take somebody else's life and things like that. So that really started to resonate after a while when I really started to listen at my mother, to her, not at her, about working on my temper and that kind of thing, and working on better ways to handle situations that I would find myself involved in. I was always blessed to be, according to others, a better than average athlete. So a lot of my frustrations I took out on the athletic field, but some of those you could not. I became a Golden Gloves boxing champion because of my anger. You know,
Oh goodness.
so there were many experiences in my life that caused me to open my eyes and to sit down and use the intelligence of which some I was born with, and things that I learned and listening to my mother.
Oh, that's good. What, self-awareness is critical, right? A lot of
Absolutely.
times when we identify, because sometimes people will identify things about us, or share them with us, and depending on how they bring it to us, whether we receive it or not. But the truth is that whether somebody brought it to us, or said, or recommended a change that we could make that could potentially help us, we had to first pick it up ourselves and say, you know what, yeah, I do think that change is needed here.
Absolutely.
So for you, when you think about some of the changes, like dealing with anger management, I imagine there's probably lots of guys that take out a lot of frustrations and stuff on a football field. My husband and son both played. Um,
Okay.
what do you say, or what do you share with others about how they make those changes for themselves, and kind of really thinking of the self-awareness kind of factor? How do you suggest for others that they make change, or really be able to identify what's going on within themselves in order to prepare them to make change?
Yes. My suggestion would clearly be is to first seek yourself. Now, that may sound trivial, but that's really the truth, because we have to first figure out, why am I angry for real? And
Yeah.
am I using misplaced hostilities toward others to deal with my anger? And how should I process this anger? So it really, as you and I said earlier, it's really about self awareness. And that's not always easy, because many times we can be in denial. Many times we give ourselves reasons for being angry. Many times we validate our anger by saying, well, I wouldn't react this way if, and I wouldn't have
Yeah.
reacted that way if. So, and that's why it is critical, as cheesy as it might sound, to really sit down and to really start looking within one's self and to start processing the information. And why am I handling it this way? Is there a better way to do it? Am I taking the advice that I've been given? And those kinds of things. And that's really what I would suggest to people, because, and I'll finish with this, all of us know that there will always be people in our ears, good, bad, and indifferent. And we've all been taught, to cipher in or to take in what works for you and discard the other. Well, sometimes we are not exactly sure which works well for us and which we should decipher. So it still gets down to uh, knowing who we are and noticing our actions and what consequences we are facing if we indulge in those actions that are stemmed from our anger.
No, that's good. That's real good. Thinking back to, being in the NFL, at the highest of highs, people play in the sport. And there's only 1%, is it 1% of the population of people
Yes.
that want to go to the NFL actually make it?
Yes.
Looking back, how did your time in the NFL kind of shape your mindset? I look at you and I think, man, you did amazing things, outside of, off the field and
Yes.
beyond. What would you say? How did that time though impact you? What was the greatest thing that you learned from your experience in the NFL?
It was another thing that really opened my eyes to the fact that all of these sportscasters and coaches and all of this stuff saying, oh, well, the best player with this, and that's a bunch of crock. You have to have luck. You have to be really good at what you do. You have to really believe in who you are. You have to believe in the things that will get you where you want to be. But and I say most of all, you also find out that a lot of people that are in the NFL are not nearly as good as you. And when you say that, it sounds really cocky and that kind of thing. But for instance, when you hear officials, and I'll be brief, when you hear officials say, well, we could call holding on every play, people complain. Well, that's really true. So if you are really a better athlete than me, then why are you holding me? We talk about mano y mano, and I'll be honest with you, that was one thing that really opened my eyes, is that there are so many guys that they are good athletes, yes. But when it really comes down to it, the cheating tactics, the holding people and the illegal blocks and things like that, it's like, come on, bro. And the sportscasters are talking about how great this person is, and it's like, man, give me a break. So I'll be honest with you. I was my mind was that kind of in a fantasy, thinking that all you had to do was be the best athlete at your position and everything would be fine. And as any athlete that's truly honest with you, that is true only to a point.
Okay.
Because you have to be with the right team, you have to have the right coaches, you have to have all kind of situations. So just being totally honest with you, you really have to understand that there are so many pieces that go within the process.
Go along with it. Yeah, it's never cut and dry, right? It's not, and it's certainly not cookie cutter.
It's not.
Nah, that's good. That's good. What would you say is one lesson you learned in the locker room that still applies in boardrooms and classrooms today?
Having respect for other people.
Absolutely, yeah.
That is critical. Having respect for other people, understanding that they're also I'm just going to lay it down for you. There are people in the locker room that pretend to be rooting for you that are not. There are people in the boardroom that pretend to be rooting for you that are not. There are people that are envious and jealous of you, and you have no clue that they are. And there are situations where, to be very frank, many times you are more prepared sometimes than those individuals that are in that football locker room or in the boardroom. You are better prepared academically than they are, but you still have to be humble enough to accept the fact that whatever at this point, this is not your show. And sometimes that's very hard when you're dealing with your ego. You
Yeah.
want to show everybody that you're the smartest in the room or that you have it all together, when really that may be true and it may not. But we all have to understand that when it's not your show, wait your turn. And that's hard to do sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. How long did you play?
Actually, I was a free agent for 3 months with the Oilers right before regular season. I got released. Then it was 5 years later. I was playing semi-pro football, and I got picked up again with the Raiders, and I was able to be there just before spring again. I'm not a very tall man, and I kept getting, man, you're great, but if you were 6'2", if you were 6'3", well, you knew that when you brought me into camp.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
just to be very honest with you,
Yeah.
that's what I make it very clear to people. I was a free agent with the team, and sometimes at the time they didn't call them practice squads, but they would,
Okay.
and people may not know about this, but I played in the old days, and there may be 8, 10 guys that nobody ever heard of, but you are on the quote unnamed practice squad. So
Right.
totally a little over a year and a half, back and forth, and they did have true semi-pro teams at that time. People didn't understand. They heard about farm league baseball, but they were really farm league football teams. And
Yeah.
we were right now the Tennessee Titans in Tennessee.
Yeah.
When I was in Houston, we were the Houston Titans. That's really where they got the name from. And they keep saying, "Oh, well, we did a contest and people gave us names." That's a bunch of crap. That name actually came from the Houston Titans when Houston relocated, when the NFL team relocated. Then that really came from the quote minor league unquote. They had them in Oklahoma,
Okay.
they had them in San Diego, they had them in Wichita Falls, Kansas. So there were about 10, 12 that were actually legitimate semi-professional teams that were connected with other NFL teams.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
No, that. You know what? That's good insight.
Yes.
Because sometimes you don't really know what all people have done, what's even out there and available, what was happening, more historically that we did wasn't in the news. Like there's not
Yes.
all the stuff that if it's not in the news, it's almost like people don't know. People just don't
Yeah.
know. Nah,
And
that's
and
good.
the last, can I say this last
Yeah.
thing? You hear sportscasters talk about, oh, well, he was sitting on his couch, or they got him off of a beer truck. Don't believe that for a minute. These
I,
guys, they may have been driving that beer truck to make a living, but I guarantee you there was some connection. They may have been sitting on the couch, but I guarantee you there was some connection.
Oh, absolutely. Listen, you're not pulling a real couch loafer. You're not gonna pull them onto a sports team of any kind because they wouldn't
No,
be they wouldn't be
no,
able to last. So I know those guys are working
not at
hard to
all.
keep their bodies in shape. They got to get out there
Absolutely.
and produce and perform. Yeah, yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. Well, you know what? So now you've spent time in education and leadership
Yes.
as well. So as a principal, what would you say your driving mission was in that role? Because I know that's different, going from being the player on a team, right, or being in the practice squad and all that. But now you leading the group. You're leading not only
Absolutely.
the teachers but the students and all of that. So, what was your driving mission as a principal?
My driving mission very clearly was not to become a politician. And I'm going to break this down for you real quickly.
Yeah, break that down.
Real quickly. When you see movies like Joe Clark and Lean on Me, that's why I mentioned Dr. George McKenna of the George McKenna story and Denzel Washington playing the part of my boss. You have to understand there's so much politics when you get into middle management and that type thing. And people say, well, your budget is this and you can't do that. People seem to forget that you are there to help children because they're on life support. And that means ensuring that you assist your staff, you have a solid staff, you conduct faculty meetings and that type of thing, meaningful faculty meetings. You make sure your teachers are trained, etc. You make sure the students are helped. You open your building to the parents. You invite them in. We even had parenting centers in my school. I have an educational program that I wrote, and you can look it up. It's called the Positive Posse, and you can look on
Posse.
YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called the Positive Posse, and you can look. So you must understand that you are there to build children. You are not there to be a politician. And sadly, so many of us get into this business to be politicians because many principals have aspirations, like most people, to become superintendents, which is nothing but a political job. To, everybody says when the camera's rolling, oh, well, I'm here to do we have your kids' best interests at heart, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And when the camera is off, that is not the case. And people are gonna be mad at me about saying this, but you find that so often, and the children are on life support. Fast forward, Venus and Serena Williams, their cousins were at my high school in Saginaw. Didn't know them from Adam. Their grandmother thought I was a great principal, wanted me to come to the family reunion to meet her granddaughters. She's passed on now. Wasn't going to go. The wife talked me into going. And we get there, we seeing all these people. Miss Oracine calls me over and say, I want you to meet my grandbabies. That's who they were. Venus and Serena. Their mom is named Oracine, their Aunt Ruth. Her kids were going to my school as well, etc. So to make a long story short, I'm telling you that simply because that's why I understood what the assignment was. The assignment was for me to make sure my students grew, to make sure my teachers were prepared, and to make sure my students had an opportunity at life. And sadly, so many people don't get that. That's why you had the Joe Clark story. That's why you have the George McKenna story, which is on Netflix right now, called Heart Lessons, and Denzel Washington is on the cover. And I've been blessed to have, quote, turned 3 schools around in my own right, in Ohio, in Michigan. And I've told you about the education program that I was blessed to write. So some of us really understand that we are there to enrich the lives of children, not to be politicians. And that's another story it's too long to tell.
Okay. Now, you know what? That's so good. My husband's family are all in education. So his sister, his brother, his sister just retired last year for 30 years as a elementary. She was a reading specialist when she retired. His brother was a professor at Penn State University for several years, and he's back now at the private school that he actually went to, that he graduated high school from, as their community engagement director. And then my mother and father-in-law, she taught elementary for 35 years. And then my father-in-law was superintendent of Riverview School District. So education is very close to us, my family, and all that. So I know what you mean when you talk about like the political things. And I know some of the work and some of what my father-in-law has shared over his career. A number of things. So I totally get it. When you think about, like even moving from, you moved a lot. You said I didn't even count how many places was in LA, Atlanta, Michigan, Ohio,
Louisiana.
Yeah, wow, lots of places.
And you know why? And you know why? Because I had the ambition at one time to be a superintendent.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yes, and I was given solid advice by Dr. George McKenna. He said, you need to get as much experience as you can in different school systems, your rural schools, your city schools, etc., so you can really be effective in helping. But, and I'll end with this, after doing that and after really seeing that they wanted you to be a politician rather than a real change maker, it just soured on my stomach. I don't want to offend your father-in-law. Everybody doesn't have the same feeling. I'm just saying for me.
Yeah. No, I understand. Everybody's experience is different too.
Yes.
Because my father-in-law, when he was superintendent, he was the superintendent of education first. That was his first role. And he did that in a district, predominantly white school district. And so there was a lot of things that he had to cut through and things like that. And then he went to St. Louis, which is where he's from, St. Louis, Missouri. And the school system that he was the superintendent of at the time, Riverview, he made as much progress as he could, but unless you are willing to be that politician
I
and,
know. Yeah,
do all the stuff that
absolutely.
they tell you to do, you're not able to get as much done as you would like to.
So
And
you could have told me my own story.
yeah, I've heard the stories. You know what? I love it because whenever I'm talking to them, especially my sister-in-law just retiring, and how different school is even now than it was, 30 years ago. And just kind of, I feel like I get a front row seat inside of the teachers' lounge.
Okay.
when they start,
Okay.
whenever they're talking, I always learn something new. But yeah, because sometimes the students are not the ones who are the beneficiaries of the
Not at
education as
all.
they should be.
Far too often. Far too often. That's the case. If I might call you Michelle, is
Absolutely.
that okay? Okay,
Yeah,
Michelle.
that's my
That is
name.
far. Okay, that's far too often the case. The students are not the beneficiaries. You get a lot of political talk. You get a lot of biased conversation. Last thing I promise you I'll say about this, I would ask my teachers, my colleagues, etc., all of the time, if we as educators spend all of our time talking about students can't succeed because of the parents, then what are we saying? We can't figure it out? So, okay, so we know it's the parents. Okay, stop making that excuse. Now what are we
Yeah,
going to do
exactly.
to help the students grow? And believe me, I would have people pulling their hair out and everything because no one wants to answer that question because that means rolling up your sleeve, putting the politicians out of the way, getting down in the dirt, making sure that your teachers are properly trained, they're properly prepared. Anyway, that's another story. Making sure the kids understand that there are expectations, making sure the parents work with you, etc., and they're not made to feel less than. So many people talk down to parents and that kind of thing. They don't make them feel comfortable coming into the
Right.
building. None of that stuff. So, and that's why I'm gonna get off that soapbox. But that's why, sadly, our schools in the state that they're in, because everybody, especially the politicians, hide behind the fact low performing schools. Okay, what are you gonna do about it? Then they
Right.
start, and you can't get an answer.
Yeah, they
So I'm sorry,
backpedal.
I didn't mean to get on that soapbox, but I
Now you were fine. I asked the question, so it's totally okay. I get it. I understand, and yeah, there's so much work that needs to still be done. As a matter of fact, with all of the new administration and changes over education and such, I pray that we will see. You just don't know what it's going to look like, and for students in those urban and rural communities
yes,
that already are lacking,
yes.
in the tools and resources. So it's going to be interesting how these next 4 years go
But
in the
you know what
education
it's gonna
realm.
look like? Let me help you. It's gonna look worse, and I'll tell you why. I keep saying the last thing I'll say about that is because you have too many educators try to hang their hats on the Michelles and your family and the Melvin Larses of the world, the kids that are going to do well anyway. They try to hang their
Right.
hats on those children. They don't need, I mean, they need you, but they don't need you. It's those children that are not performing, that do not have the support. Now that's when you start to prove how great of a teacher you are,
Well,
or how
yep.
great of an administrator you are. And that's why I told you, Michelle, I've offended so many of my colleagues, but I be serious. I say,
Yeah.
heck, anybody can teach that kid, but can
Right.
you teach this kid?
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah, no. I'm gonna have to get you and a few others. There's another gentleman, and he used to do a lot of he was an educator too, named Carl
okay,
Boyd out of Kansas City, and he was one of the actually he's from Chicago. And Mr.
okay,
Boyd's background, I think Mr. Boyd's in his he's close to 80 now. I know he's in his 70s, but he's close
okay,
to 80 now.
okay, okay.
And he always his quote and thing that I remember him saying all the time when we was working on some projects together was, no one rises to low expectations.
Absolutely love that.
Yeah,
Love that.
yeah. And so no, I hear you. I know exactly what you're talking about. More than more than I probably even should. But you're right. You know, there's some students that they're going to do well because they're going to find a way to do well,
Yes.
and they're
Yes.
going to be all right. So all right, so we gonna switch gears a little bit.
Let's do
So
it.
now you did some work with the Urban League, and I worked
Yes.
for the Urban League too. I
Okay.
some years ago, yeah, in '07 to '09,
Okay.
director of outreach and marketing for the Urban League of Greater Kansas City under
Great.
President Wayne Grant. Yeah. So
Great.
so so as you served in the Urban League, and we know that there's always lots of work that needs to be done right in our
Yes.
communities with our
Yes.
students and with people just in general. So tell me, when you served as a director, what were some of your biggest challenges? What were some of your wins and some of your wars, right, in that position?
I'm laughing because I was too aggressive. You
Were
know,
you?
the urban, and what I mean by that, you know, the Urban League is more laid back, intellectually stimulated, and that kind of thing. I did all of that, but I thought sometime, and I'll answer you specifically when you ask the biggest wins and the biggest losses. I thought that we should work more with the NAACP when there were issues of injustices, when there were issues, as we're talking education now, of academic how can I say, inadequacies in the schools,
Mhm.
when there were issues just in the city itself with things that should have been addressed at school board meetings and things of that nature. And I was blessed to have gotten my guys to go along with me on some of that, but some things they thought that well, you know, maybe that's really not for us, and maybe we should just talk to the superintendent, et cetera, et cetera. And I would sometimes try to get them to understand that it is always appropriate to be cognizant, respectful, to speak about things you know what you're talking about. But we also always have to bring facts, and
Yeah,
we have to bring statistics, and we have to do
data.
research.
Hmm.
Yes, absolute data. And I found, sadly, for the young people and people I was working with, they didn't do that well enough for me because I would get what I call surface things, and as you probably can tell, they thought I was a taskmaster. You know, I just believe in the diamond analogy. You know, you got to dig through the dirt and the muck to really get people's attention.
Right.
So I felt very strongly that we were successful in that arena because we did start to do more research. We did start to have data when we're sitting down, talking to individuals, city officials, etc. And we delved into the educational aspects that we didn't feel were strong enough. Even the hiring of teachers and that kind of thing. And so I felt and what I was told, people appreciated that, but that's why I said the other part I started there first, you know, is that sometimes they thought I was too aggressive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
No. But you know what? You have to have those folks, right? Like somebody has to be the one that's going to stoke the fire or get more out
absolutely.
of, there's always another inch we could probably go if we don't retreat, like
Absolutely.
and so you need people like that, just as much as
Absolutely.
you need it all. So
Absolutely.
now being a strong voice and activism and stuff, what inspire you? Is that just an internal thing? Is that inspire you to speak up and get involved beyond your career and roles? Because a lot of times people aren't engaging as much now as they
Yes.
used to, right? You would.
Yes.
And so was that internal, or was that developed? Was that taught?
Both. And I will be very brief again with this. It was internal because I grew up in the deep South here in Louisiana. And when you see your great grandmother go into a store and she stands by the door with this little basket and she doesn't move until, and I call my white people less melanated, by the way. And when she
Okay.
doesn't move until the less melanated clerk say to her, and her name was Mary, Mary, go and get what you need. And I hear my great grandmother going, Yassam. that used to eat me up. My grandmother used to do ironing, and she did it from her home. And there was this little girl, and I'll call her name. Her name was Christine. The mom would come up, and she would bring the laundry and stuff to my grandmother, and my grandmother calling some 5-year-old Miss Christine. And as a kid, in the black family, you don't disrespect the adults. And she's
Right.
calling my grandmother by her first name. I want to go out there, and I don't advocate violence against women at all. I was a
Absolutely.
little boy, but I want to go out there and slap her in her mouth. You don't call my grandmother by. So then, as I grew and I started looking at the unfairness, see, I always watched, like unlike a lot of young people, I would watch the news a lot and things of that nature. So I was doing that civil rights movement time, and I was also in that transition of forced integration, and I saw all of these inadequacies, etc. Even playing college football, even playing professional football, people don't talk about these things, but they are very real. And they try to go, oh, they're playing the race card. Well, bottom line is, if race wasn't a factor, I wouldn't have to play the card.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so you have to address some things, as you've already said. Some people are not as vocal, and as we all know, what's that phrase? The hungry, a silent mouth or something
A
like that
closed
doesn't get
mouth doesn't
fed.
get fed. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, closed mouth doesn't get fed. And so, if a perfect example, there is the Duck Dynasty. This guy, I don't know if you heard Duck Dynasty or not,
I
but
have.
it became a very great world favorite. And the guy's from Vivian, Louisiana, and but anyway, he was talking about he never saw black people angry, and they was always smiling, etc. What else were they going to do? Because if they spoke out and that type of stuff, they were castigated. They were deemed troublemakers, etc. So when those kind of mindsets, even to this day, really bother me when people try to gaslight you and insult your intelligence. So it was I was born with it, and I experienced it far more times than I care to remember. But it was there. So somebody had to step. I gotta tell you this story. The book you see behind you called "Dying on My Feet."
Mm-hmm.
I'm a 30-year acute pulmonary leukemia survivor, and I was writing that book as an original book, but I kind of put some stuff in there about my coming up. During the forced integration, we went to Airline High School in Bossier City, Louisiana. There's an Air Force base here called Barksdale Air Force Base. Well, one day our English teacher kept 4 of us at the class, and her statement was, and I quote, called us by name, and our school was called Charlotte Mitchell. Y'all must didn't go to Charlotte Mitchell, did you? In her mind, we couldn't have been local African American children that were academically astute. We had to, since we were academically astute, we had to be African American children that had come from someplace else, namely
Wow.
Barksdale Air Force Base. And that in it that ate me to no end. And last thing, I got in trouble, never got in trouble in school. I had to get my payback. So you don't disrespect adults anywhere, let alone here. So I kept my finger up one day. Finally, she calls. She said, "What are you on, Melvin?" I said, "Where are all these smart people I've been hearing about?" And I'm very honest with you. That's all we heard. How smart the white kids were. The white kids this and we were kicking their butts right there that we weren't supposed to. And they were struggling academically. Of course, not all of them. And I wanted to know. I've been hearing all of my life how smart y'all are and how inadequate we are. Where are they? Now, my high school had, oh, heck, in my graduating class, it was almost 400. And so all of these so-called smart white kids, I'm still waiting to know, where are they? Yes.
Yeah.
And
No.
I ended that way.
Melvin, I love it. Well, Melvin, listen, I swear the time goes so quickly. I told you it was gonna go fast, didn't I?
Understood.
But before we get out of here, I do want to ask you about the Dying on Your Feet, about the books you've written. You're a 7-time author.
Yes.
You are brilliant, I can tell. even in our first meeting, I was like, there's something about this young man that is phenomenal. So before
Thank
the
you.
audience, before everybody signs off, I would love for you just kind of to tell them a little bit about the book, and then we're going to tell them where they can get copies of it, as well as, find out more about you.
Okay. Well, briefly, dying on my feet is I said 30, but actually I'm a 32-year survivor of acute promyelocytic leukemia. In 1990, I was told that I had less than 5% chance to survive if I did not get a bone marrow transplant. I was not able to get a bone marrow transplant. I was in and out of remission for a couple of years. They sent me to this special cancer treatment center. I was supposed to be there for 9 months, all of this stuff. And I only was there for 6 weeks. God said, no, it's not his time. So, and that's even to this day, people don't understand, because now if you look up acute promyelocytic leukemia, there's like maybe an 80% chance of a survival rate if you with chemo and all of that stuff. But during my time, which was 1990, there was actually you weren't given very much of a chance at all. I never found a donor, etc. So in writing that book, as I said, I put a little bit in there about my journey as a in and out of professional football camps. I put a little bit in there about my leukemia survival. I put a little bit in there about growing up in the South and dealing with a lot of racial hatred and good times as well. And now that book is easy to be purchased. You can get it from Barnes and Nobles, but you also can get it from me at my abrighterfuture91 at gmail.com. That's abrighterfuture91 at gmail.com. Or you can go to my website at www.brighterfutures91.com. Or you can contact me directly, 318-517-3611, 318-517-3611.
All right. Well, awesome, Melvin. I am so glad that you came and were able to join me today. It's been amazing. And you guys, we've got all of the description and website info about to get in contact with Melvin right in the description below. So make sure that you check him out. Melvin, before I let you out the building or out the lab for sure this time, give me 3 best pieces of advice for change makers.
3 best pieces of advice. Number 1, believe in yourself. Dismiss the negaholics.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to good counsel. Believe in yourself. Discover who you are. Dismiss the negaholics and listen to good counsel. Now, how do you ascertain or discern good counsel? Usually that's going to be a parent. It's going to be many times your educator, your principal, your teacher, people that are speaking positive things into your life. You can always see that as good counsel. When they're speaking positive things into your life, when they are uplifting you, when they are trying to get you to move forward and make sure you are your best self. So believe in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Dismiss the negaholics. Listen to good counsel.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Melvin, for being here today. I am grateful to have had you. And we'll have to bring you back. I know this will be one of those episodes where people really get in and really listen. So
Looking
thank
forward
you
to
again
it.
for coming on. Thank you for
Thank you for
coming
having
on.
me.
Absolutely. Well, guys and gals, y'all know this is the end of the show for today, but make sure that you tune in every Friday. We drop a new episode. There's an amazing guest that comes into the lab and tells us how to change. And so with that, I love you all. Thank you so much for tuning in. You guys make my life so much easier and so much more exciting, because it keeps me coming back and learning more from more and more people. So until next week, you guys be blessed, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Let me end our